Cutoff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
Who's chiming in?
Oh my gosh. And with me is...
Uh-oh. Security is low. I'm Renee. I'm back. Listeners, how are you? I missed you guys.
Yay! Renee is here. All right. Full disclosure. We're in my living room. As you know, the month of December are not regular episodes because our producer, Rich, is crazy busy. So I've done a few interviews that I'm releasing during the holidays. And I invited Renee to come in to listen to this one and also to give her input on it.
You guys are in for such a treat. It's,
oh my gosh.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's cool.
So you guys, this is a gentleman named Peter Ellenstein who is actually, he's an actor, director locally. His family is kind of a dynasty in LA.
I was going to ask, how did you meet him? How do you know him?
Through my friend Elaine, who I think has worked with him.
Okay, but you've never performed with him.
I have never performed with him. No,
very cool.
We've never met until that day
interview.
Of the
well,
interview.
You wouldn't know it. You guys sound like best friends.
Yes, we're old. We're old pals. We get along famously now. Anyway, I'm going to let you guys listen to Peter Ellenstein tell his story. Full disclosure. Second full disclosure already.
Yeah, thank God. That's what you can count on in this podcast. Is
always
disclosure
truth.
Won't be half. It's gonna be full.
Something happened during the interview, and I apparently turned my mic off, so you can hear me still through his mic. But it's
I listened to it. It's fine, listeners. You're
you
not
can
going to
still
care.
Hear me,
it's fine.
But it annoyed me. But as things do. But so. Please, that's a pre-corrections corner for y'all. Okay. So anyway, go ahead, listen, enjoy, and we'll talk to you on the other side. Hi, guys. I am sitting here in my living room with a gentleman named Peter Ellenstein, who has graciously agreed to come and talk to us and tell us his remarkable story. And thanks for being here, Peter.
My pleasure.
Let's get into it. Tell us your story.
Okay. So my story begins in 1986. I was in my mid-20s, and my girlfriend at the time, who had been going to Chapman College, had a friend there who had been donating sperm. And I was waiting tables and trying to pursue my acting career and try and put directing and producing gigs together. And she said, well, in addition to waiting tables, you should see if you can donate sperm. It's easy, and he makes a lot of money doing it. And I thought, oh, okay. And she went off on a trip to China, and I thought, well, while she was gone, I'd look into it. And they accepted me, and so I started doing that. And I did it off and on then for almost 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So which is longer than most. And I guess I maxed out at one of the places, the California Cryobank. And then I went, well, boy, I don't want to give up that income. It's so much easier than waiting additional
and fun
shifts. That's right. Something I'm going to do anyway. I might as well get paid for it.
Exactly.
Not everyone gets paid for their hobbies. And so I then called up what was called Procreative Technologies Incorporated, which was at USC.
Okay.
Out of their hospital, and then I donated there. And I don't remember exactly. I think I switched over. I think I donated from maybe 87 to 90 or 91 or something at UCLA, and then I switched over and did the next few years at Procreative Technologies. Then I stopped. I did it at California Cryobank. I was only allowed to do it 3 times a week. And they would test them every time and let you know if you were not
how viable.
I guess I had very, very high sperm count, so
apparently
it was
you
easy.
have swimmers.
I did, and then when I was at USC at the Procreative Technologies one, they actually paid. The more you donated, the more they paid you per. So there was incentive to do it as much as possible. So there, I donated at times up to 5 times a week.
Wow.
And apparently I was still able to do it. Obviously, when I didn't have a girlfriend, it was easier than when I did have a girlfriend.
Sure.
I would have to cut down. I was like, ooh, do I want to have sex tonight or do I want to make money tomorrow? But I did it off and on, and I didn't even really think about it. I signed some sort of thing said that it would be anonymous, and I think I checked off a box that I would that if at some point there was a medical necessity that someone had, that the place could contact me, and then I would decide whether or not I wanted to have contact. But that was, other than that, it was, I didn't really think about it again, except anecdotally once in a while. Over the intervening nearly 30 years from when I started, I joke around with my friends periodically, or my brother or his wife would joke around with me about it, but really nothing, didn't give a thought about it. It was all abstract, except that at one point, maybe 15 years ago or so, my brother and his wife were at some fast food restaurant someplace, and they saw a little kid and they said, "God, doesn't that kid look like Peter did when he was a little..."
Oh.
And they went, "Do you think it could be?" Nah, no, that'd be sort of... Anyway, but they told me about it. And that was the only thing ever that I really went, ooh, I wonder, maybe there are a few of them running around somewhere.
Okay, so let's go back for a second. When you were donating, how did they present it to you as to what would happen with your sperm? And
they told me that it would be used for infertile couples. And there was a donor sheet that was created that had minimal information: my height, my weight, my blood type, a little bit about my background, my educational background, hobbies I had, things like that. But it was all very generic.
Yeah.
Something to give them a little bit of a sense of who I was and did I in any way match. I know nowadays they do all these things. They do videos and baby pictures and all kinds of things. But back then they were working off of one sheet of paper.
Yeah.
And so there really wasn't any way that anyone would have been able to find me.
Right.
Flash forward to October of last year, 2017. I'm married. I have a stepdaughter, but none of my own children. And I'm living or working out of Oklahoma, where my now ex-wife lived, and I was in her house. And I was out visiting California. I was actually a friend who lives down here in Beverly Hills. And I had actually come to California to go and try and get the rights to a memoir that I was trying to get adapted into a play, to a musical. And I had gone up to San Francisco with my friend. We'd driven up together to meet with the guy, and that meeting went perfectly well. The next morning, we're sitting having breakfast at the hotel cafe, and all of a sudden, I get a ding on my phone from Facebook Messenger. And I looked down and I started to read it, and my face began to blanch, and I had a shocked look on my face, and my friend said, "Well, what is it?" And I just handed him the phone, and this is what I read, and when he read it, and he started cracking up, kind of hysterically right away. But here's what it said. It said, "Hi, Peter. I hope all is well with you. I am messaging you under very strange circumstances, and I want to prematurely apologize if I have been led to the wrong person. This is a very sensitive subject for us all, and I can understand the surprise it might bring. To give you a bit of my background, I was born in 1994 due to in vitro fertilization. My mother had always wanted a kid, and with this new technology was able to achieve her lifelong dream of becoming a parent. So the reason I'm messaging you is that I believe you may have been the donor. I don't know what the proper protocol is in this situation. I'm still just stupefied. If you choose not to maintain contact or even respond, I understand completely and will not hold it against you. I just want to say thank you. If you want to go down this crazy rabbit hole, I am here and would love to keep exploring. Thank you for taking the time to read this message. All my best, Rachel White."
Wow. That's a very well written note, by the way.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Turns out later on I found out it actually wasn't in vitro. She was inseminated just normally. It wasn't in vitro fertilization where they take the eggs out and do
What do
it.
you mean she was inseminated normally?
I mean, she was in vitro. Isn't it where they pull the eggs out and use and then inseminate them and then put them back in?
Yes.
Yes, that's not what they did with her. They did it using whatever,
like a turkey baster.
I guess, sort of that sort of thing.
Oh.
Which I guess is actually
it works.
often used.
Yeah, I've
done
heard,
that
I've
way.
heard it
So,
works. Yeah.
so because her mother corrected that in
okay.
one of the other articles. So I was, needless to say, stunned. I had so many simultaneous thoughts. I also had the thought of, oh, is this a scam? There's so much Facebook stuff. But then again, thought, well, they're sure not going to get money out of me,
Right.
being a theater person. And just wondering, but then it was so well written that it didn't seem like it came from Nigeria.
Exactly.
And it gave me so many outs. It gave me so
Yes.
much ability to not respond. So of course, it was Facebook Messenger. So I went and looked at the pictures, and they looked quite a bit like she could be my daughter. So I immediately sent it to my wife and my brother and my sister. Just forwarded the text, and basically with the saying, "What do I do?" And this may not be true, but my sense of it is that my wife wrote back to me saying something like, "I already know what you're going to do," just because she knew me. And my sister wrote back, "Is it a scam?" And my brother wrote back saying something like, "I knew this was going to happen sometime." And I didn't respond to her for about 8 hours.
Right.
We finished breakfast. I also sent it to a few of my other friends, close friends who had known about this. I went upstairs to the hotel, and I called the cryobank to ask, is this possible? How could someone have found me? And I started the procedure of doing some research to find out what did they know about anybody I might have had, who I might have given birth to. And they basically said that, based on the donor sheets, now with big data and a little bit of anecdotal information, sometimes there may be enough in there for them to do big data searches and find me.
Question.
Yeah.
Had you had your DNA?
No.
You hadn't?
I'd never had my DNA done.
So how did she find you?
Well, that's what I finally wrote to her. I wrote back to her finally about 8 hours later. I said, please give me some time to get back to you. Thank you for writing. Please give me a little bit of time to get back to you. And she said, no, don't worry, take your time. I'll be here. And so I then wrote her another note saying, how did you locate me? This was now in the evening when I didn't write back to her at all for almost 8 hours. It was like 6 in the evening or something. And I was still in San Francisco, and she said, well, I got your birth date, that you were Jewish, that you were an actor or a writer. And so I thought, well, you were in Los Angeles, you were an actor, and I had your birth date, and you're Jewish, so I looked you up on IMDb.
Okay.
And went through them and
literally went through the birth
went
dates
through the birth.
of
You
actors
could
with
search
Jewish
by
names.
Jewish names of with that birth date.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, she's good.
Yeah, she's
That's
pretty.
the type of
she's
thing
pretty
that I
great.
do. Yeah.
And so she said, now there was more to it to that I found out later on. There were a number of other steps she had to go through prior to getting the full birth date.
Okay.
Because on the sheet that she had originally had, she didn't have the full birth date. So that's kind of her story of how she sleuthed out, met other half siblings, things.
Oh, okay.
So she and I started writing texts back and forth, like right shortly thereafter. How old are you? What do you do? Back and forth to each other. A little bit, and the questions started getting faster and faster, and we discovered quickly that we had a bunch of things in common. We'd both gotten out of high school early. We'd both chosen not to go to college after getting out of high school. She's a guitarist, and she went right into trying to be a guitarist and in the arts. I went right into being an actor and into theater. And a number of other things in these texts, and they were going back and forth so quickly that we were not even answering each other's questions all the time.
Wow.
So I said, are you up for maybe doing a video chat? And she said, yeah, give me 5 minutes. And so we then did a video chat that evening. And as soon as her face came on screen, it was pretty profound. It was, we were both just kind of stunned. I found out she'd been trying to find me since she was 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
She was raised by a single mom, never had a father or a father figure.
Okay.
And she always felt temperamentally that she was wildly different than her mom. And wondered where that came from.
Of course.
So we talked for about 40 minutes, and it's just so happened I was going to be driving back that next day with my friend back down to LA. She lives in LA, and we agreed to meet that next afternoon. So I drove into town, and as my friend puts it, he went from not being sure whether he wanted to meet her to basically being in love with her in about 24 hours.
Right.
So we got into town. He lives in Beverly Hills. She came over 15 minutes later, and she got buzzed in the gate. She walked in, and we went and we hugged, and we sat down and talked for about 2.5 hours. And periodically just sort of stopping and staring at each other and giggling and weeping. And it was pretty profound. Yeah. And she had a concert to go to that night, so she needed to go, and I was leaving early the next morning to go back to Oklahoma, and but we decided we'd meet up after her concert, so we met again that night at Swingers. Oh, I left out one piece. She said in that first video conversation, about 2/3 of the way through, I don't know whether to tell you this yet, but there's more. And I went, more? I said, do you have a child? And she said, no. I said, oh, but you have brothers or sisters? And she said, well, kind of. There's more. And I said, you know what? This is already blowing my mind. Why don't you not tell me any of that yet? Yeah, let's get to know each other first and see how I'm feeling about this. So as I'm driving over, Ubering over, because I'm going to fly out early the next morning, so I'm Ubering over to the restaurant to meet her late that night, about 11:30. And in the Uber ride on the way over, the Uber driver, I'm telling him this story, and he's like fascinated by it, but he also says, I've never met my father. He said, my father left when I was little, and I don't ever want to see him. And then I went on talking about the story, and by the time I got out of the car, he said, I think I'm going to try and find my father. And I realized, wow, this story is pretty powerful. Yeah. And the sense of family and reconnection.
A lot of people.
I mean, there's nobody who doesn't have a father or a mother or a brother or a sister or a child, right? Mm-hmm. So it cuts through a lot of things, and everybody has their own take on it. Yeah. So she and I met that night, and again, she jokes about it because I walked up to the table, and as I went over to sort of give her a hug, I bumped the table with my leg, and the water spilled, and she went, that's where I get it. My mom had been a ballerina. And it's true. We're all klutzes.
Yeah.
So we visited again, and we hugged goodbye, and I went back to Oklahoma, and we stayed in touch. And I already knew I was coming back out in about 3 weeks for my friend's daughter's wedding. And I decided that I would come out early so that she and I could spend more time together. And my brother and my mother, who's 90, was at the time 91, lived down in Carlsbad, California now. We grew up in Los Angeles. And so she was going to come and meet me. In the meantime, I started reading whatever I could. I started doing research. I started reading articles and trying to find out, well, what is it, what is special about being a donor kid? What are they looking for when they're looking for people? And I found one thesis that had looked at a lot of different studies and kind of had broken it down into 7 different categories of what the different donor kids might be looking for, based on what their backgrounds were. So I was trying to prepare myself. I was also in touch with the cryobank, which had in the few years after I stopped donating completely, the cryobank had bought or taken over Procreative Technologies. So the UCLA one basically bought the USC one. They merged. And it's now one of the 3 largest in the country, if not in the world. Okay. And so I found out that all those records sort of were merged. So I started a dialogue with them trying to find out what I could find out about what was going on. And they were actually excited to reconnect with me because they're now they're now way more organized than they were back then. And they're trying to, track their donors and find out about health and do blood tests and do DNA tests and all that sort of stuff so that they have records. So I got a little bit of information. And the truth is there's almost no record keeping, as you've probably discovered. Yeah. There's almost no regulation of this entire industry in the United States. And so, they were, the people who worked there were very nice, but half the time they didn't know what they could tell me, what they couldn't. A couple times, a couple of them gave me information and said, "Oh, no, I can't tell you any more about that. I didn't know it was
a very new technology, and there was really no guidelines for ethics."
I have no idea how many times I donated. I have no idea how many samples that created, and I have no idea how many sales of those samples were made or where they went. But I did discover they were able to give me a little bit of information, and I also found out about the donor sibling registry. So I went on there and started looking, and I sussed out that I probably had like 3 to 5 kids.
Okay.
And that there was even a set of twins that I found on the website. So when I was talking every day to Rachel, before I came back to LA, one of the conversations I said, I know I have a few of them. I said, I even found a pair of twins, and to which Rachel responded, "Oh yeah, I know the twins. They're great." I went, "Oh my God." So when I flew into town, this was about 2.5, 3 weeks later, and Rachel picked me up at the airport, and we went out to lunch, and we ordered, and then I said, "Okay, I'm ready. Lay it on me." And she said, "Okay." And she started reading me off the different siblings that she had already found that she knew about. And there were 11 others at the time. So I found out that I didn't have 3 or 5 others. There was Rachel plus 11, so I was at 12.
Okay. So how had she found them?
Combination of, actually, one of them initially had found her through the donor sibling registry.
Okay.
Through him, she found out that there was another boy. There's all kinds of other weird things, because it turns out he found her after they met and everything. They realized they had gone to the same preschool. They'd shared the same best friend, and they'd even been on play dates together when they were little. Yes. Crazy.
Do the donor sibling registry, is that DNA based?
No, it's donor. It's run by by donor kids, and now there's some parents on there too who were simply, before DNA, were simply trying to find each other. So they would go in, they'd put in the donor number, the clinic, the doctor, the description of the donor that they had. So it's
number.
A database.
Okay.
Yeah, and and depending on who, and the fertility doctor, and so there's been something like 16,000 matches made through it, or more than that, and there's about 70,000 people on it.
Okay.
So that's how she found, she connected with 2 of them. He already knew about another kid also, again, because they'd met when they were kids, and the mothers figured out they were from the same doctor. There was one fertility doctor in Beverly Hills, or a clinic, that apparently used me quite a bit. Okay. So there's I think there's 5 or 6 kids who came, at least that I know of, that came through that clinic.
You were the rock star.
I was, I guess, yeah.
Let's give him a Peter.
There was, as I said, there's so many stories here. Later on, one of the later kids I found out, who was actually the youngest one, the mother had been through, it's a lesbian couple, and the mother had been through many attempts, and they'd gone used the baby books, and they didn't, because this was more recent, and finally they had run out, and the doctors from that clinic said, "Well, I only have a little bit of information for you on this one, but this one, the sperm count's so high that even I could get pregnant." So apparently I didn't know that. I mean, I knew I had high sperm count at the time, but I didn't know it was super high. But apparently it was super high. Super sperm. Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I called up this other donor who I'd read about, Michael Rubino, to find out whether he was willing to talk to me. And he was great. He made me feel really good about it. He said almost all of his experience was positive. He said it was 99% to 1. It was a really positive experience. He said the different people will want different things from you, and you have to determine how much time you have and all that. But he said it's really been a joyful experience for him, and it gave me a lot of confidence in then going forward. And none of the kids with him and none of them with me have been like, "Oh, you're my dad, I have all these expectations of you."
Yeah.
It's really been, they're so happy to just find out where they came from, get to know me a little bit, and see whether or not there's a connection there. Right. But there's been no anger. I think there's probably, with adopted kids, there can sometimes be anger and complication.
I think on both sides. I think with from my experience, there's a lot of shame that comes from the parents that they
gave up a child.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of kids have abandonment issues, and for me, I mean, I certainly have issues because I'm adopted, but
right.
Not with my mother.
Not with your birth mother.
Yeah, just
right.
because of the fact that I'm adopted.
Right.
And just what that entails and what, it's
right.
just,
but it's a different set of issues though than
absolutely.
The donor kids.
Yes.
Because the donor kids,
planned.
right. They were planned and they were deeply wanted
absolutely.
by their birth
right.
mother. The problems are often with the fathers mm-hmm. because there's an imbalance in the relationship. Right. Not with all. There's some of the fathers who I've met are just fantastic mm-hmm. and they're the dads, and I never try and replace right. anybody, and there's I'm not their parent. Right. I've never been their parent. I didn't raise right. them. I didn't do anything for them growing up. Mm-hmm. And my philosophy has been that sort of evolved pretty quickly was I want to be a positive in their lives to whatever extent they want me to be in their lives, and with whatever resources and energy I have, I want to be a good thing in their life, not a bad thing or anything that causes them a problem. And so they set the boundaries of the relationships. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'm having a birth a month at the moment. So,
I've had club.
Exactly. I mean, I think since you first called me, I've had 3 more and 2 more grandchildren. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm at 25 kids and 3 grandchildren right now.
I have chills.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've met 20 of them.
Oh my God.
And at least 2 of the ones that I haven't yet met are coming out here in January. They both are in Boston.
And they're all in the continental United States.
No. Well, they were all so far they were all born in the continental United States.
Okay.
Right now I have a son who lives in China. He's teaching there. I'm going to travel to visit him on Monday. Never been to China, so it's a good reason to go. Yeah. He's the oldest boy. He's trying to be a stand-up comic.
I love it.
And then I have a daughter who grew up in Sacramento, and she's been living in France for many years and is actually trying to get French citizenship. She just got her master's degree over there. And her name's Michaela, and she's great. And I've met her, and actually, when the first time I met her, I went up to Sacramento when she was home for a visit, and I stayed overnight with her mom and dad, which was really crazy.
Yeah.
Amongst the grouping, there's a set of triplets, there's a set of twins, there's 2 different sets of full siblings, because the cryobanks will let you reserve additional samples in order so that you can have full siblings.
Yeah, that's great.
And so there's been 2 of those. There's 2 of them are in Michigan, and the other 2 are in Boston. Those are the 2 who are going to come out in January. I went back about 2 or 3 weeks ago to Michigan because I'd met the older boy who found out first through DNA. But I hadn't met his sister. Neither of them knew when he took the DNA test that they were donor kids.
Yeah, that happens
so he found out, but then he talked to the mom. The mom didn't want to tell the daughter yet, and she finally told her just this fall. And then, 2 months later, I came out to meet her, and I stayed overnight at his house with his soon-to-be husband. And
isn't that funny that people are weirded out by the thought of a biological parent having a connection with the adoptive or the other parents?
Well, I don't know whether the mothers have had problems with it. It's more about the fact that if they were keeping a secret, now the secret becomes more and more difficult to reveal the older the kids get.
Yes.
And I will say, if there are any parents out there who are the parents of donor-conceived children, every single one of my donor-conceived kids said they wish they'd known their whole life.
Yes.
The ones who are still together did tell their kids from the beginning. Now, there are other ones who did tell their kids from the beginning and they aren't together, so that I don't know that means. But every single one of the kids say that. By the way, I should mention that I sometimes catch flack from people for referring to all of them as kids, but there really isn't a nomenclature for this phenomenon. It's new. And so, when I say my children, There are people who take offense to it, but I'm not saying that I raised them or had anything. I don't know what other word there is, and I ask each of them what they would like me to call them and how I should refer to them, and I ask them. I tell them they're welcome to call me or refer to me however is comfortable for them. But it's strange that some people have a real opinion about what we should call each other.
Right, and those are also people that have nothing to do with
either of right at all.
Yeah.
But and I understand is that they're because the way if they raised children or they raised kids and they have their feeling about it, and my situation is so completely different.
Yes.
But I kind of think of it as, a kindergarten teacher refers to her classroom as her kids, so there's a number, I think that's broad enough. But it's been an interesting subject. There's times that some of the kids don't at all mind my sort of referring to myself in their presence as a parent or something. And some of them consider me not that. And so I have to, it's a negotiation each time as to what they want to be called.
How do you keep track of it?
Well, I think you just get to know each other, and I try my best, and I've learned to be a little bit more sensitive. I was, because of the way Rachel and I connected so immediately, and that she and I, we talk every day. I mean, every day we talk, and we see each other once or twice a week usually. And we went to Europe for 3.5 weeks together and traveled with Michaela in France with her for a while. And so there's a real developing relationship, really strong developing relationship there that it's not a typical father-daughter relationship. She said, well, I don't know that I can call it a father, though I never had a father, but it's more like maybe an uncle or something. And I never had a daughter. I had a stepdaughter, but I didn't have a daughter. So I just refer to her as that because it's the closest. She is my daughter biologically, and she's certainly the closest thing to a daughter, to having raised a daughter that I'll ever have.
Yeah.
And so we're fine. She refers to me as her father.
Do they call each other dibblings?
No.
Okay.
They do jokingly.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Okay.
They don't have the same. Some people have had this huge reaction to it, and I think everybody has the right to define the way that they want to be referred to.
Yeah.
And so I would say if somebody says, don't call me this, I don't want people to refer to me as that, I think they have every right to do that. I do kind of have a problem when people try to tell other people how they can and can't be referred to.
I agree. 100%.
And that's kind of the same thing I'm feeling about this. And I understand that my situation is very different, and my relationship to all of these kids is completely different than a parent who has raised them and parented them and taken them to school and nursed them when they were sick and paid all their bills and done that. And I totally get that what I have with even the closest of the kids is a completely different relationship than that. But it's certainly different, though, than meeting somebody on the street. Or I taught college for many years, and there's some kids who I really mentored, who I am very close with, who I love, and a couple of them I would refer to very paternally. But it's a different feeling than it is that I have with Rachel or Margaret or Jeremy or Noah or any of the kids who I've become Courtney, or I've become very, very close with and spend a lot of time with. So, so but that's an interesting issue in that, in what is this new type of family that's now happening. And I'm certainly not unique in this. There's a number of people in my situation, and my situation would have probably been very different had I been at a different point in my life when they contacted me.
Right.
So that's been crazy. And as I said, so when Rachel found me, there were 12 of us at the time. And very quickly, others started being added. We had our first group get together the day after Thanksgiving in 2017 down at my brother's house, where Rachel and I had met the twins, Alana and Bridget, already, but Alana came down with Rachel, and Courtney, who's one of the triplets, drove down from Santa Barbara, and Margaret, who was born in Maine but lives in Texas and is married to a guy from Madagascar. The two of them, their Thanksgiving plans fell out, and so they decided to drive out and spend time with us. Now, we didn't get together on Thanksgiving because my brother's house was full already, but the next day they all came over, and we all met, and we went to the beach, and we ate, and it was so exciting, and they all got to meet their grandma, and we got pictures, and it was so much fun. And so we decided to try and do a larger thing shortly after Christmas. And in the meantime, a couple other people had shown up. Jeremy found me. Up until recently, Jeremy had been the only one who didn't come through the Rachel connection.
Okay.
Prior to that, every single kid had come through the Rachel connection.
Okay.
Jeremy's mother somehow found me on her own.
Oh.
A couple of years earlier, and here's more of the weirdnesses of it. She, I don't know, she, I think, had been given by mistake, because this is apparently what happened with some of the other kids, my full profile, not with my name, but with a lot more descriptive information, a lot more information about jobs and things like that, including some movies I'd been in when I was younger. So she was able to find me a couple of years ago. And now, at the time when she found me, I was teaching at the University of Miami just for a year, running their theater and teaching in their musical theater program. She's an alum of the University of Miami. Jeremy, her son, is an alum of the University of Miami. He wasn't going there at the time I was teaching, but she was there for an alumni event. She came by my office, but she came by apparently right before I was done, because I'd finished my sabbatical replacement. But my name was on the office, and she saw a bunch of boxes in the office, and she came by, and she didn't know what to do. I wasn't in there. She came by the next day, and the boxes were gone, and my name was off the door. But it was about a year or two later that she told that Jeremy had wanted to do 23andMe. He was going to do it for he and his mom for Christmas. And she said, oh, no, yeah, I don't want to do that. And he said, oh, well, I think I'm going to do it anyway. And she said, well, then you better sit down.
Oh.
And she told him.
Wait, and he didn't know?
He didn't know.
Oh.
He had thought that his older brother's father had been his father.
Okay.
His older brother was 9 years older.
Okay.
And his older brother's father was not very much a part of their lives. He'd met him 12 or 15 times in his life, and had felt kind of, not cared about by him at all. Sure. So when he found out, it was, he thought, oh my God, I'm going to freak this guy out. And he went online shortly after the, I think he contacted me the day after the Thanksgiving gathering. So he went online thinking that he's going to find this guy who doesn't know that he has any kids. Sees that I just had this little mini reunion with, and he said, well, I guess you're not going to be surprised about this, but, well, and he told me so. And then we also found a couple of others. And so when we got to the end of December, we had some friends, wealthy friends of my family's, have a horse ranch, and they gave me one of the houses on the ranch to use. So we had a one-day gathering on that, and about 8 of the kids came out for that, and it was really, really fun.
Oh, great. And
then we've since had about 4 or 5 get-togethers. The most recent was last weekend. I think 8 of us got together.
Okay.
The Saturday after Thanksgiving at at Lane's house. Lane is one of the newer ones. She's 26. She grew up in Encino. She went to Seattle University. When Lane was discovered, we realized that she went to Seattle University at the same time that Griffin, who is the one who had 4 moms and grew up in Ashland, Oregon, also went to Seattle University. We realized they'd had a class together and had even sat next to each other a couple of times, and that Griffin used to bring her pet ferret into the pet store where Lane worked. And they didn't know they were half-sisters.
And this is what I'm talking about. Why did they not think about this? I have 3, 4, 5. I have 5 brothers, all who would have been in the range of people that I could have dated.
Yeah.
And we grew up in the same state. It's something that could have happened.
It could have happened.
That's horrifying to me.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah.
No, I agree. There needs to be regulation, and it shouldn't be anonymous. At least, shouldn't be
I
anonymous
don't think
until.
Anymore, is it?
Yeah.
Still
it is.
They're
Yeah.
doing that?
Yeah. I think there's. I don't know what the. I mean, there's no regulation in terms of legality regarding that. Now, by anonymous, I don't mean that you should necessarily be able to contact the donor or vice versa. I think there should be a bare minimum of things. And again, there's people who probably have different opinions than me. I think all the medical stuff should be a lot, and a lot of basic information they should be able to get immediately.
Yeah.
Once the kid is 18, the kid should have a right to know who the person is and be able to try to contact. I don't say that the donor should necessarily have to meet. But I think that the donor and the parents could potentially, through an intermediary, decide that they wanted to have more openness.
More of an open.
But I think it's a case-by-case basis because, as I said, right now with these kids contacting me in my mid to late 50s, I have time, I have energy, I'm not in the midst of a career, I don't have another nuclear family whose feelings I need to protect and time I need to protect. So it was a great time for this to happen for me. Had it happened 10 years earlier, I would not have been nearly as good a person for all of these kids as when it happened. So I think each situation is completely different and has to be treated differently. But the needs of the kids are all still the same, that they're really want to find out where they came from biologically, what their history is, what they have in common, all those sorts of things. And then certainly the meeting of the other siblings, which has been, for so many of them has been really meaningful, especially the ones who are only children.
Yeah. I bet.
So like Lane and Rachel have become incredibly fast friends. They're even looking for apartments together. And other ones, a bunch of people have really connected, and it's pretty wild. And they've been showing up basically, as I said, one a month. The most recent one showed up. Here's another one. The most recent one showed up 2 weeks ago, Tuesday. And she actually also found me on her own. And she actually found me 3 years ago, but didn't contact me. Her mother had also been given too much information, so she was able to find me.
So she sat on it for 3 years.
She sat on it for 3 years because I think she looked me up on Facebook and everything initially, and went, "Oh my God, he's got this whole life. I was living in the Midwest. He's running this company." But what she did realize, because she's also in theater, because she's now getting her doctorate at Northwestern in theater and history, she realized that she had been an intern at a theater in Maine that my brother directed at, and she worked on the show with him, and she met him and his wife and his two kids who are her first cousins, and even one of my sister's kids who's her first cousin, but she didn't know it at the time. So so when she contacted me, and that now she's getting her doctorate at Northwestern. My sister lives in Evanston, and she lives 6 blocks from where my sister works. They're all, of course, different, but there's so much stuff that is clearly nurture that runs between them, which is shocking to me. Like they're almost all left-wingers, even if they were brought up in a conservative household.
You mean nature?
Nature.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm like, wait, no.
Right. That there's way more nature in things that I didn't know they would be in, that I thought would be nurture.
Interesting.
Like politics. That they're almost all, there's really none of them who are conservative. Some are maybe moderate liberal, but most of them are pretty liberal. Even if they grew up in conservative households, almost none of them are religious. Although some of them started off quite religious.
Right.
They all have a snarky, word-oriented sense of humor that most of them are fairly profane, kind of like me.
Your kids. I don't think so.
No, I don't. No. Luckily, no. I keep saying, but now it's like every time I see anybody, I'm like constantly looking. Look for some of those telltale signs. Do they got the bags under their eyes? I don't know. Do they?
Gosh.
Yeah, it's really crazy.
Where is what databases is your DNA in?
Mine is only in 23andMe, and now it's on GEDmatch or GEDmatch and
FTDNA, the places where you can just upload
the ones where you can just upload them.
Yeah.
But some bunch of the kids are on Ancestry also.
Okay.
So like Rachel's on both, Margaret's on
they
both.
Can get
matches. So they get matches, and I don't.
Okay,
I don't contact any of the kids first.
Sure.
What happens if they show up? They either contact one of the siblings, or the siblings will usually send them something.
Okay.
Like when Margaret showed up, about a third of them, or close to a third of them, didn't know that they were donor kids until they did the matching. So that's been, that's a whole other trauma thing. Yeah, so whole thing's kind of crazy. And for me, I'm just enjoying the whole process now of getting to know them. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's been a crazy year for me. Not just that, I ended up getting divorced during the year. It didn't have anything to do with this, but and moving back home to Los Angeles, where I'm from originally, but from Oklahoma. So I had that change. Haven't had a full-time job now for a couple of years, so that's a huge change. So I've been going through lots and lots of changes over the last year and a half.
Yeah,
and this has been crazy. And trying to find people say, "Well, what's it like?" I said, I have nothing to compare it to. But it's certainly, having left a life that had seemed stable for a while and then wasn't anymore, it certainly creates an enormous amount of continuity.
Yeah.
So that it's not like, well, there's going to be a lot of things that go away, but this isn't going away.
Right.
So that's
interesting.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, I'm giddy. Sometimes I'm driving down the freeway and I just start cracking up at the absurdity of the whole thing. But I feel incredibly lucky.
Yes, it's a great story, and I think, and you've handled it beautifully. I think, there are people who run fast in the opposite direction. A lot of people I've been hung up on by a lot of people.
Oh, wow.
That I reach out to on behalf of their biological children. So you just never know, and this is my favorite reaction to the whole thing.
Right. I mean, and I didn't know how I was going to react at all. When it first happened, I could have gone, I think, had my life been in a different place, I might very well have gone in a different direction, even though I'm sure I would have still felt the emotional tug. That article that I'd read, or that synopsis of all these studies, was really helpful to sort of understand that different of the kids are going to want different things. I didn't have the same that incredible connection I had with Rachel immediately, that to not expect that level of coming together.
Right.
Because I think for both of us it was really magical. Yeah. And I've had that with several other kids as well, to different degrees or different ways. But we sort of refer to her as, oh, she's kind of my firstborn,
I was going to say, she's like...
But I have a really strong connection with several of the other kids, and really nice connections with a lot of them. And then some of them, it's more distant. And I don't think, they're all perfectly good. There's one son who lives up in Oregon who does not yet want to have contact with anybody. Okay. He's had a little tiny bit of contact with a couple of the siblings just by text. His father's very involved. We have a Facebook group for all of the siblings and me, and then we have another Facebook group where the siblings are allowed to invite anybody who they consider family into it as well. So sort of a broader group to share big things with. Yeah. And then we have like a Southern California group, and people pop in and out. Some of the people are always on the chat group. Some of the people only pop in once in a while. It gets pretty crazy at times. Wow. And then when we're trying to organize bigger group things or there's announcements, we sort of put those announcements everywhere so they can be seen by whomever, because not everybody goes and checks and that Facebook chat room goes really, runs through really fast. Yeah. And when we're doing stuff just locally, we'd send out to just the Southern California ones. And so it's pretty wild.
That's fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much.
Sure.
For agreeing to I'm so excited for the listeners to hear your story, because we haven't had this point of view yet. We've talked a lot about donor conception, and I've had a couple interviews with some donor conceived people, but you're a whole new perspective. Do you have anything you want to plug, or a website that
we don't yet? We very well may have a docuseries at some point. It's being pitched at the moment.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
We'll see whether a network picks it up.
The networks are chomping at the bit for anything.
They are, but they also, what we decided that we don't want to make fake stories.
Yeah.
So, we don't want to do the manufactured stuff that they do on so much of the reality TV, or fake situations and things like that. There's so much real drama, and I think there's so many real issues that can be explored that will actually be informative and valuable, as opposed to it just being
creative
TV.
Drama.
And I think that the idea of just exploring what is this intentional creation of a new type of family, is, and how it fits in with society, and how it fits in with the normal nuclear family, and and what are the differences between that and there's a lot there to unpack, and I don't think it needs to be sensationalized. I think it's unusual enough and allows us to look at a different perspective. To me, the fact that these families are now, we're choosing to get together, whereas most families are not intentional; they're happenstance, right? And then you grow up with baggage, and none of these kids are meeting with baggage with each other, and so they can sort of create these relationships amongst each other as they choose, and using an adult's perspective in how they choose to do it. Anyway, so far it's fascinating and so much fun to see.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter.
My pleasure.
So appreciated. I'll put if there's anything else, I'll put stuff in the show notes.
Okay.
That you want to share, and that's it.
And
Okay. Renee Colvert.
Yes.
Thoughts.
Yes. Okay.
Let's do the third full disclosure
Yes.
of the episode. Renee, if you listened to some of the earlier episodes, was an egg donor a few years ago.
Right. So I don't quite know, because with egg donations, there's not going to be multiples that will come of it.
Certainly not this many.
So tops, I got 8 out there. Tops.
Tippy
But
tops.
it is, for me, just as a review to listeners, I happy to do it. Happy to have the money. Happy to sign that thing that says you will never contact me. And now all of that is getting waived, and so I'm a little nervous. My little eggs couldn't be older than 8 at this point, so I think I've got a second. Though your guy said that she started looking for her dad at 8.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's what she told him. So my initial thing of this was just like, why would you do this to me, Julie? This is my worst nightmare.
Okay. So sorry about that. Let me maybe put it into perspective for you a little bit. Keep in mind that these babies still grew inside their mother's bodies.
Right.
They literally are using your eggs, and truly they are your genetic children.
Right.
But they're, and I actually read an article this morning that was talking about how children still develop their personalities and their history when they're in utero.
Oh, cool.
From their mother, from the person that is carrying them.
That's amazing.
I mean, they don't get her genetics,
Sure.
but they get certain, they have a connection.
Right.
And her body's essentially sending them signals about who they are. So
that's comforting as
yes,
hell. I love that.
Bear that in mind. And I truly believe that, though some may want to learn their heritage, I think they are far less likely to feel like they're missing out on something.
Which is great. So I guess, and the thing, so 2 thoughts. One, oh boy, have I been wrong in my life before. Boy, have I stood my ground. I will never. And then I changed my mind completely. Cats is one of them. Julie, I used to hate them, and now they're the cutest.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the musical.
Oh, sure. Yes.
I still hate that.
It was. I do think you never know how you're going to respond to something until it happens. So I think there is that element. And you could tell that there was a connection immediately that he also wasn't prepared for.
With the first daughter.
Yes.
I also thought it was very interesting how he says that he takes his cues off of them as to how they want to proceed and what kind of a relationship they want to have and what they're interested in knowing and not knowing. In fact, I talked to him this morning.
Oh, interesting.
And I made a little offer to him. Because I know that a lot of the kids want to know their heritage,
right?
Not necessarily have a relationship. I mean, people in general,
sure.
With the sperm donor. So I offered to do a tree for
all the kids.
Well,
all
not
25?
for the kids, but for him.
Oh, I love it.
Because they're all his children, his on their paternal line.
Really nice of you.
So I'm gonna, and he has not done ancestry DNA. Some of the kids have, but I haven't heard back, but I'm hoping he'll do ancestry DNA so I can really utilize the ancestry website because that's really how I do most of my work.
Amazing.
But yeah, if I can, and I'm curious as to how far I can go back for him as well as all of these kids that,
Right.
So I'm excited about that. And
such a nice gift. You were such a
I hope
generous
the kids,
person.
I hope I think it'd be nice for the kids to all have one place to go to and know that we're all connected through all of these people way back.
Right.
To this time.
Which will be amazing. And then another thing that I was like, oh, you know what's happening here? I'm projecting a whole heap because, and I still do. I haven't worked through this completely, but I really think that the kids will be like, whatever capacity you want to be in my life. I'm like, you don't believe that? I need to step up and I need to be there for you. So I'm just assuming. Yeah. But then when he was like, no, many of them don't want to be part of it. I was like, I like that.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. I think it's very common. There's, people are, I would say the percentage is much higher of people, adoptees or what have you, that want to know.
Yes.
There are certainly adoptees that don't want to know anything and don't care, and that's fine, absolutely fine. I validate them. However, it's nobody's job to vilify people who do.
Right. 100%. No, I completely agree. And I think there's also some self-awareness of the whole, like, why don't you want this to happen, Renee? Is I just don't want to disappoint them. That's it.
Of course, because you're a pleaser.
Reason.
That's what you are.
Yes, exactly.
That pretty much is, you put all this pressure on yourself once again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm hearing what I'm saying. All right. And yeah, it feels so good to hear you say that, like, they have a right to know, and that's all we're seeking to do. We're just seeking to give them the information.
Facts.
Yeah.
All we need is facts.
Yeah.
What we do with them is up to us, but and I think it's important that everybody is an adult when it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And here's another thing. I don't want people to think that because Peter is so open to it,
right,
that's how everybody has to be.
I definitely felt that way. Yeah. I was just like,
I mean, if Peter, and
that's
what
you have to do.
He said himself that when he happened to be in a place in his life that was perfect.
Yeah.
Where, he doesn't have any kids of his own.
Right.
And he's just out there.
Right.
And this is kind of cool for him.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be in that
place.
position.
Yeah.
Specifically, I would say if you are, married and have a family, and then all these, I can imagine a lot of the other children feeling threatened by all of these people coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
So there would be a lot more to work through.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's just a lot of emotions that need to be tended to in doing that. But I also, I can't fathom a scenario with which you get an eloquent letter like that, because it was so well written.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And not respond. I think even if every fiber of your being, you're like, I don't want to do this, you're just like, no, but you're right. You deserve a response.
And that's important. Guys, it's so important to know how exactly you're going to present yourself to your biological person, so as to not scare them away.
Yeah. Do they have a template in the registry for the kids?
If you go to, DNA Detectives, of course, another listener was talking about DNA adoption. It's literally for adoptees, talking them through what to do and what to write. And, a lot of the sites I'm seeing a lot of people write what they're going to write and then post it and say, what do you guys think of this? Should I change it?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Yeah.
So it's, and in general, we just want answers.
That's it. Well, and I think we've been talking about this since you started the podcast, is that the reason you get so far is because of your approach. I think.
I think so too.
And so, I think.
Yeah, if I came across as crazy, that you certainly would,
Well, not only crazy, but compassionate for the other person's feelings. I've always got the sense that you're just like, hey, I know this is going to be a lot for you.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
acknowledging that out of the gate, which is great.
And that was learned, though. I mean, I'm a compassionate person.
Yes.
But yes, I am. But my first thought is, I want the people that I'm helping, I want them to get everything they need.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I've had to remind myself, since I've been doing this, to take it slow.
There's a lot of feelings that need to be taken care of.
Yes, and a lot of the times, kind of put little suggestions out there and let them figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. But overall, it was such a good interview. Peter,
yeah,
such
I think
a cool
it was
story.
great. Thanks so much, Peter, for doing that. Tell people about yourself in case they forgot.
Oh, sure. Yes. My name is Renee Colvert. I'm on Instagram, Renee S. Colvert. There's a cute dog on there quite a bit. And then I also have a dog podcast called Can I Pet Your Dog? So if you like dogs, this is your stop. This is
totally
place to go. If you don't, keep it moving.
It's, it's one of those podcasts that just makes you smile the whole time when you listen to it.
That's very sweet.
I'm just saying.
That's very sweet. Yeah. It's a lot, but
I'm
it's
not
fun.
making it up. Hey, guys, my name is Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me at Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Cutoff Jeans Pod. We have a Facebook group called Cutoff Jeans Podcast. It's a closed group. Answer the question, which is very basic, but be creative. What else? Oh, there's an Instagram page as well.
Amazing.
Cutoff Jeans.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Tell you what, you got a
Boom.
nice delivery on those these days. Real sharp, just rolls off the tongue.
When you turn it into a song, you can memorize anything.
That's perfect. Good job.
All right, guys. Oh, and by the way,
Yeah.
as
Should I
always,
remember?
the truth is in your jeans.